What kept the most famous tomb in Egypt hidden while thieves stripped almost everything around it? Tutankhamun's resting place dodged 3,000 years of plunder, then exploded into legend overnight. The answer isn't just luck, it's rock, rain, a rushed job, and a century of arguments that still refuse to die. What's happening today may change the story again. The Valley of the Kings wasn't kind to secrets. Floods rolled through, stones slid, and robbers were relentless. Yet Tut's entrance sat under a layer of alluvium, natural flood-borne silt, so deep that later workers threw up simple huts right over the spot. Anyone searching saw huts and rubble, not a pharaoh's doorway. That cover turned out to be the perfect disguise, and it kept doing its job for more than 3,000 years. But that wasn't the whole story. By the time Howard Carter arrived, the valley looked like a jigsaw of dig scars and dead ends. Buried for ages and lurking just meters from where other teams had walked, the clue was exactly where no one expected it. Beneath those old workmen's huts, laid over flood debris. When the first seal broke and stale air rushed out, the world met a pharaoh through a keyhole. Egyptology's most famous treasure room finally breathed, and yet inside the walls, something felt rushed. Scans of the burial chamber point to faint grooves, tiny tracks you'd expect if a painter moved too soon, brushing pigment across plaster that hadn't set. To many researchers, these marks whisper the same message. The decoration was a sprint, not a marathon. It fits a scenario where a young king's death surprised everyone and workers finished only what mattered most, while other spaces stayed plain. The walls became a deadline. Tutankhamun's reign was short. He ascended as a child and leaned on powerful advisors. As he aged, court art showed him as the classic warrior king, but the body tells a more complicated story. Research published in medical journals indicates malaria infections and skeletal issues likely weakened him. One line of evidence points to complications after a leg injury made worse by disease. He didn't fall in battle like the art promised. He faded early, and Egypt scrambled to do right by a royal gone too soon. The treasures buried with him, they had to come from somewhere far harsher than a palace. The jewelry and shrines gleamed like sunlight, but the road to that shine ran through the eastern desert. Stone valleys where miners chased veins of quartz for tiny flecks of metal. A network of wells spaced a day's walk apart, way stations scratched into the wilderness to push deeper toward the mines. Settlements rose out there, low walls, grinding stones, pounding tools, grinding again and again to win a spoonful of gold in a week if you were lucky. The heat didn't care. The empire did. The raw metal fed the workshops fed the tomb. Meanwhile, the afterlife needed more than gold. It needed a way to travel. The pharaoh's grave goods included model boats, crews at their posts, oars poised, every detail scaled for eternity. These weren't toys. They were insurance policies built on the belief that the dead would need transport, fishing, and a way to cross the sky with the sun. Finds in other elite burials echo the same logic. When a rare cache of 4 crude model boats surfaced in a 4,000-year-old tomb near Aswan, it lit up the field, another glimpse of how the living prepped the dead for a journey they couldn't afford to miss. The little ships made the big promise, you won't go alone. But the modern world had one more journey for Tut's treasures to make. After the discovery, artifacts scattered into multiple museums within Egypt. For the first time in a century, the plan is to bring virtually everything together so people can walk through the whole story, start to finish. The Grand Egyptian Museum, designed at massive scale near the Giza pyramids, intends to showcase more than 5,000 pieces from the tomb in one place. Officials and press briefings point to a full opening slated for late 2025. The idea isn't just spectacle, it's scholarship. New labs, fresh imaging, and a chance to see pieces side by side that haven't spoken to each other for generations. But even as the pieces converge, one question keeps stealing headlines. For years, a bold claim has trailed the north wall of Tut's burial chamber that behind painted plaster, a hidden doorway might lead to more rooms, maybe even the resting place of a royal woman, with some reports pointing to Nefertiti. Rumors suggest ground-penetrating radar has, at different times, hinted at voids that could be man-made. Other scans, later and differently calibrated, came back inconclusive. The debate never quite dies. Reports claim the signatures might be small construction gaps or simply geological noise. As of now, there's no verified chamber beyond the wall. If anything changes, it'll come from careful work and peer-reviewed publication, not whispers. Yet, the biggest twist might be the simplest. The valley itself did the hiding. The valley's cliffs carved channels for rainwater. Not common, but when storms hit, the flows were brutal, pushing rock and silt downhill. Tut's tomb sits where these channels converge, a natural catchment that kept dumping debris onto the same spot. Add in the waste chips from another tomb's excavation upslope, and you get a perfect choke point. More rock, more silt, more cover. Over time, the entrance disappeared beneath nature's housekeeping and the everyday mess of building elsewhere. If you were a thief, you needed luck. If you were Tut, you had geology. Tutankhamun wasn't the greatest ruler of his age. He didn't build a pyramid. His armies didn't redraw the map. He became immortal because his tomb stayed quiet while the rest were stripped bare. Floods laid the blanket. Workers stitched the patch. A rushed farewell sealed the secret. Carter lifted the corner, and the world stared through the slit. Now, with the Grand Egyptian Museum preparing to assemble the full story under one roof, and with old rumors still circling that painted wall, the legend keeps moving. The valley, silent as ever, reminds us that sometimes the biggest guardian is the landscape itself. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. Let me know what you'd like to see next down in the comments.